Jen Lichter, it's great to have you back on the Singletrack podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in France now, so can't be too upset about that. But thanks for having me.
First time in Chamonix.
First time, yeah. Second
Okay.
time in Europe. Worlds was my first time, so it's not disappointed.
What's the initial reaction to the Chamonix Valley? Have you had a chance to do any shakeout runs, anything like that?
Yeah, I think one word that comes to mind is wow. I think, you see pictures and you hear about it, but to actually be here, you just realize how insane and grand everything is. By everything, I mean the mountains that surround the town. But yeah, they're striking. It's striking. I can't believe people live here year round.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Mike a few days ago, Mike's in Les Uches right now, and he was saying that in a place like Chamonix, especially pre-race, you have to actively plan your runs to avoid, these 3,000-4,000 foot climbs where it's typically the reverse here in the States, where you have to really intentionally plan out these runs to accumulate your vert. So yeah, totally different ball game there. Um, I want to go back in time a bit before we get into OCC discussion. Last time we had you on the show was before the 2022 Speed Goat 50K. And it just generally seemed like a pretty special summer for you. You had won Broken Arrow, you won the Rut, you nearly won Speed Goat despite taking a wrong turn. But I took a look at your social media after that, and you sort of confided that you took, quote, too big a bite in that stretch racing wise. And ultimately, you ended up sort of shutting things down a bit early. I'm curious, what was that experience like for you, and what did you learn from that experience of, having that amazing stretch of performances and then sort of needing to halt things on a dime?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think one of the things with being new to the trail scene is everything's new and everything's really exciting. And then you have people who see you race and then they see your strengths in racing and then they're like, I think you will do great at this race. And you can't help but say, yes, that sounds awesome. And, Speed Goat, for example, wasn't even on my mind at the start. And even when I raced Broken Arrow, I signed up 2 days after Broken Arrow because I had some friends say, oh, you would do so great, Speed Goat. Like, you love this type of mountain stuff. You should do Speed Goat. And I was like, I've never heard of this race. But then I went online, kind of saw the profile, and I was like, it sounds pretty much up my alley. Sounds kind of like something like the Rut, for example, a little more verty than Broken Arrow, and not as technical as the Rut. So I was like, it's like the perfect medium. And so, yeah, it's just, and then of course, then I did another 50K later in October,
Yeah.
after the Rut. And so I was in a place where I felt so confident and so fit that it was hard to be that way, performance wise, fitness wise, and say no because you feel unstoppable, you feel on top of the world. And then my body, was giving me signs, like pre rut actually, that I needed to maybe shut it down after. But
Mm.
I still even had a great performance at the Rut regardless. But I took 2 weeks off, did this glacier trip with Mike Foot, and then was like, okay, I got 3 weeks till Worlds. So I ended up hopping in a 50K thinking I was, it's going to be my long run. And then I just got very injured on that race. I just like, my body was like, nope, we're shutting it down for you. And so
Mm.
sometimes when you can't do it, your body will do it for you. And so going into this year, my training has been so different. My racing has been so different, and just how I approach saying yes to things. And yeah, just being more cautious, more mindful that this is like a longevity thing, not a I want a quick fix kind of scenario for me.
Yeah.
I want to be in the trail scene for a while. And I think that part of being new is kind of learning from that, even if it's painful, mentally and physically, as injuries are.
This episode is brought to you by Oladance, wireless Bluetooth headphones which deliver 19 hours of battery life, superior sound, the ability to still hear your surroundings for safety, and an open ear design so you don't get that achy feeling from wearing them for extended periods. I used these earlier this month on my run of the 100-mile wilderness. And if you're curious, head over to oladance.com/ST and use code ST at checkout for $30 off their OWS2 headphones. Also, thanks to Pillar Performance. Pillar, spelled Pillar, is a sports micronutrition company that I was introduced to after having Sam Parsons from Tin Man Elite on the show a while back. I use their pineapple coconut flavored triple magnesium product, which delivers high potency magnesium glycinate for better sleep and added recovery during my training blocks. If you'd like to try Pillar today and you're an American-based listener, head to thefeed.com/pillar and use code Singletrack for 15% off your order. For international listeners, use that same code Singletrack for 15% off, but go to pillarperformance.shop to do so. It seems like one of the great traps for an athlete like yourself when you get to your level of the sport where everybody wants you to be involved in their event. You have sponsors around you, you have race directors around you, friends around you, and they're all saying like, go do this race, come here, come here. And you sort of, well, maybe you lose touch with what you actually want to do or what you feel like is appropriate. You say that you're sort of a different runner, you have a different mindset about how to approach the sport in 2023. What has ultimately worked for you in maybe creating some separation between how you want to approach things and all of those voices out there in the community saying, you know, come do this, come do that?
Right. I think it's part of it is the quality of the race versus the quantity that I want to do. So I can't, for example, last year I couldn't be peak form at every single race. So I had to be pretty much subpar of it, as in like I did what I could, but it wasn't like probably what I could have done if I just had focused on that one race. Because, I didn't recover as well because I raced a 50K 3 weeks prior. And so I think this year I chose races that I was excited about and just decided, this is the schedule that I'm going to set for myself at the start of this year. And this is what I'm going to stick to it. Because I think once you get into a season, it's kind of hard to just kind of like, throw that out the window and say to yourself, but I wasn't thinking I was going to be this good. So I might as well like use my fitness and show everyone how good I am. And so this year is more like the races that I do want to do, I want to full send them basically. And just feel like I am rested. I'm ready to tackle them versus, I'm going to see what I can do today because I just did a really hard 50K 3 weeks ago. And so, yeah, it's just sticking to my guns and actually peaking for a race instead of just one. I feel like last year, I'm not going to lie, I think I peaked at Broken Arrow because I was so excited about it with it being a Worlds qualifier. And then, then training for Speedgoat because it was so last minute. And I mean, I did really well. I'm not going to lie. Like it was hard. It was probably the hardest race just because of the extra climb. But I think out of all of the races, I felt the most sharp at Broken Arrow. Even at the Red, I was pretty tired. And then I had to train for Worlds, and that in itself was kind of a survival thing. So my body was, going from 150K in 2021 to, 4 in 2022, and then possibly an 80K, and then the trail marathon in April. Like that was a lot for my body, and I should have known.
Well, I appreciate all of that perspective, and I love that you have framed 2023 around this concept of every single race I sign up for, I'm signing up with the expectation that there will be a full send involved. I think that's a great way to approach it because it's very easy to eliminate all of this extraneous stuff as a result. The year seems like it's off to a great start. You won the Lake Sonoma Marathon. You probably most notably took 4th overall, first American at the 46K event in Innsbruck at the World Trail Championships back in June. You did mention after that race that there was a big question mark heading into it, and that after the fact, it did ultimately take a lot out of you. Go into more detail about your mindset and your fitness before and after that race.
Oh man. So before the race, um, I wasn't even really that nervous. I think I was just more curious. And I think having had a winter where I didn't train, I didn't run, I cross trained obviously, but I couldn't run till basically the start of January, where I was walk running every other day, every 2 days, and really started doing back to back runs, like the second week of February. And so Lake Sonoma for me was, like a big indicator of like where my fitness was. And I Lake Sonoma was very hard, and I don't remember it being that hard last year, but I also wasn't, as out of shape. But yeah, I think Worlds was more of a curiosity thing, because I feel like last year when I stepped on the starting line, I knew where my fitness was. I knew my strengths. I knew where, with other athletes signing up, I could be, or where I would be. Worlds was, I had never raced against Europeans. I'd never raced against the Americans that showed up, or were selected, or qualified. And I really had been only training for about 3 months. So, I mean, granted it was a very solid 3 months of training. But I think I entered it out of curiosity versus nervousness. And I think that actually played to my benefit, because I viewed it as more as like, all right, like, you love climbing, you love like mountainous 50Ks. I viewed this more as a 50K than a 46K. And so I just kept telling myself, all you can do is put one foot in front of the other, and you love a good grind, and like there's no expectation whatsoever for yourself. I felt like I almost had pressed the reset button. And I focus on not comparing myself to who I was last year. Because I was, like the bliss is ignorance last year. And now it's like, this is an opportunity to test yourself against the best in the world. And so it was more of an exciting thing than a nervous thing. But yeah, I mean, I had no idea where I would fall as far as the world, or like that
Yeah,
group of women. So coming out of that in fourth place, I was shocked, really. I
interesting.
aim to place in the top 10, maybe. But at the end of the day, I didn't know what to expect. And so I just went in there and I just ran my race. I ran the way that I would run any other 50K, like I did last year. I just like, your effort level, and you just have to trust it. And that's what I did. And it played really well.
Thanks to Brooks for their support of our UTMB coverage. I used their Cascadia 8 way back in 2014 when I was introduced to trails during my thru hike of the Appalachian Trail. So this is pretty cool. I've been using their new High Point collection in the field, even during these interviews, as you can see here, particularly their waterproof rain jacket and pants. I think they work well in settings beyond inclement weather. They're just comfortable. They're stylish. I've also been wearing the new and improved Cascadia 17. Everything is on point. Head over to brooksrunning.com/Singletrack to check it all out. Also, thanks to Morton. Morton fueled over 80% of my run during the 100-mile wilderness earlier this month. I used 25 of their hydrogels and 10 of their 225 C bars. They all went down easy, never created palate fatigue, and made me feel good, I think, in large part because of the natural ingredients. These are also the same products used by top athletes like Tom Evans and Kilian Jornet. So head over to Morton.com to take a look and maybe even try some of it all for yourself. Fast, I was just going to ask you about your takeaways from that race in terms of your competitive standing in the sport, and whether that race was ultimately what gave you the confidence to compete at the highest level and to believe that you belonged at the top of the sport at any start line? Or did you already believe that before Worlds and it was just kind of bared out that way? Like, how did you think about that?
So I mean, I definitely, coming out of my season last year, I definitely believed that I belonged up there. There was and like I'm not being cocky or anything when I say this, but like, I know I could have been, maybe in the podium had I not been injured all winter.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I knew I belonged up there. I wasn't sure if I was at that level fitness wise as of June, but I knew the best Jennifer, when she's healthy, when she's fit, when she's confident, she can race with those top ladies. And so I actually came out of Worlds, not disappointed that I didn't podium. I came out of there so excited. And I think there was one point in the race where I bonked really bad for about 4 miles. I went from 3rd place to 7th place. And I just kept telling myself, oh no, Jen, you went out too hard. You went out like last year, basically. And then I was like, but it's like mile 12. I still have so many more miles to go. And so I just shoved some gels, drank some water, and then just like that, within like 20 minutes, I was like revived and was able to start running and climbing again. And so I came out of Worlds, excited because I was like, I still have so much fitness to gain back, and I haven't even touched that yet this year. And so, and I love competition. Like, I would rather race a race that, I get my butt kicked, but I'm like, went all out, than a race that I win, by 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. So I love competition. I think it brings out the best in the best, honestly.
I really appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate the confidence. And it's interesting timing because before this interview, I was talking with Dakota Jones about his race for CCC, and he sort of joked that a lot of these pre-race interviews ironically become a competition over who can sandbag the most heading into their race. Like, oh yeah, like I feel okay, like things might be all right. And so I don't see it as cocky at all. I think it's just being realistic, and it's good insight for fans like myself who are just curious to see how these races are going to play out. I do want to talk about OCC specifically. First question being, what did you do in the last, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks, to really specifically get ready for this race? Like, what do you see as the demands of this race, and how did you fine tune to be as ready as possible? This episode is also made possible by Features, makers of my favorite trail running socks. They're durable, they're stylish, and they're comfortable. They're trusted by many of the best athletes in our sport. So if you'd like to give them a try, head over to their website, grab a few pairs, and use code Singletrack20 at checkout for 20% off your next order. Also, thanks to Kodiak Cakes, makers of my favorite pancakes. Kodiak has been at the center of so many memorable post-long run group breakfasts for me. And I don't just rave about the great taste. They are also 100% whole grain, and they're packed with 14 grams of protein per serving. That helps immediately with the recovery process. So head over to their website, get yourself a few boxes of their mix, and use code SingleTrack15 at checkout for 15% off your next order.
That's a great question. So I think my coach and I just really focused on like turnover, honestly. Because, I had a very solid base, leading into Worlds just from cross training. Like, I was cross training like a maniac all winter. And so I had a very strong aerobic base, but my sharpness wasn't there because you can't really do that on an elliptical on a bike. I believe turnover you can only get from running and doing speed work. So I focus, because Worlds made me realize like my climbing's good, like I couldn't climb for a long time, but it's still there. Like, climbing is definitely a strength of mine. When people ask me what's your greatest strength when it comes to trail running, I'd say climbing is. I love a good grind. So one of the things that I came out of Worlds with is I don't have that sharp speed to, get after it on the flats and get after it on the downhills. And so we focused on getting that speed back that I lost over the months. And then I just added more vert slowly. I'm not, if you look at my Strava, I don't do that much vert. I'm not the type of person that needs it. I believe it. the few times that I do more than 13 to 15,000 feet of vert, I'm like so dead. I don't know how people can run. I like kudos to you that can run, thousands of feet every day. I need to do like vert every other day or every other 2 days, and then do speed work and or flat runs to recover properly. And so my philosophy is when I run trail, when I train on trail, I want to feel good doing it. Instead of wasting those miles feeling like crap sauce because I did too much and my quads are sore. And so going into OCC, it was like introducing more vert because prior to Worlds, I wasn't doing that much because I was still, coming back from a very serious injury and I didn't want to re-injure myself. And because he was, in the hip and you use your hip so much when you climb. And so I added more vert and I added more, and then I really focused on sharpening up my speed. My coach thinks speed equals downhill. So, because, there's only so much downhill you can send so you don't destroy yourselves and your quad, so, that's honestly what I did. I focused on feeling good on my climbs and sharpening up my speed. Cause I think, from what I've heard about the OCC course, it's very runnable. Not as technical as Worlds, not as technical as the rut. It's kind of what I've heard is like runnable as in speed go kind of. And so, yeah, I need that sharpness. I know that at Worlds when, for example, Teresa LaBeouf passed me, I just didn't have that sharpness that I maybe had last year to like, oh, I should go with her. Because you never know what can happen in the next like 12 miles. I let her go because I was like, this is all I have in me right now, And so, and also just focusing on my confidence. I think people don't really talk about this, but when you go through an injury, when you come back to racing, like the confidence thing, honestly, is one of the biggest roles is like trusting your body again. And it took so long for me to trust my body. And I actually had to message my doctor at one point and tell him like, hey, I need another MRI because I need that mental imagery that I am okay to train to the potential that I want to train or to the intensity that I want to train. Because I was having, he calls them phantom pains on my hip where the injury was. And so I go in, get an MRI, and he just looks at me and he tells me the story about phantom pains and how athletes deal with it after a very serious injury because their brain wants to protect that area like all times. And so, yeah, he showed me the MRI image and he's like, Jen, your bone is completely healed. Like you can train, you can send. Because I was like so cautious, especially on the downhills.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding, like 2 weeks after, like the pain was gone. It was like somehow my brain decided like to trust it. So yeah, it was a big confidence. So also working on that and realizing that, like I may not be the same Jen as last year, but maybe I could be a better Jen than last year.
I got to say, one of the things that's a takeaway from this conversation for me is just, the benefits of self-awareness and always checking in with yourself, your mind, your body, and also just like the extent to which you really analyzed that performance at Worlds and what you needed to work on. And just like what was required to be successful at OCC. The last question I have for you revolves around your expectations at this race. As a fan of the sport, as a commentator on the sport, when I think about who's on that start line and who might podium or win, you're certainly right up there. In my opinion, probably in a lot of people's opinions. Do you feel that way? Like, are you here to win? Are you here to podium? Is that how you're going to race? Talk about that.
I mean, I'm definitely here to throw down. And I think that's what makes races like this exciting is having all these girls that are potentially in the same fitness category and they're all out there. And it's honestly like, who has it that day, who wants it the most that day. So my expectations for OCC is I want to race hard. And when I finish, I want to be like, that was so hard, and I actually want to say that. There's been a few races where I raced really hard, for example, Worlds, and I'm just like, my face goes numb. Like where I knew I raced really hard at Worlds because like my face was tingling and my hands were tingling at the finish line, and I was just like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like my body's shutting down. And so I going into OCC, like I want to show people my fitness, and I want to show myself that I belong with these girls. And yeah, I mean, honestly, my goal is to race really hard and do me out there. And by do me, it means like follow my instinct to race, because when I follow my instinct to race, it normally turns out really well. Like I've done that in all the races that I've done. And to some people, I may start out too fast, and that's okay, but that's the way that I race and that's the way that I feel confident. And so, yeah, it's just, I mean, I would love to podium. That would be amazing. Who doesn't want a podium? And I think there's a lot of Americans that I believe we can sweep it if we all have a really great day.
Yeah.
Not that I want to say all Americans should get 1, 2, 3, but that would be like incredible.
Pretty cool.
But I think we have so many strong women that have that talent and have that in mind for themselves too.
Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat. Appreciate all the insight, the self-reflection. We're very excited to watch your race unfold next week. We'll make sure to link to all of your social media in the show notes. Any final thoughts that you want to leave listeners and viewers with before we go?
Oh man, it's gonna be an exciting weekend, and just I don't know, enjoy it.
In fact, you know what? I'm forgetting one question, and that is shoe choice on race day. What are you going to be wearing to race OCC with? This is I've forgotten to ask a few people this question, and I'm getting berated on YouTube. So I got to ask you here. What's your shoe of choice for OCC?
So I'm gonna wear the North Face Pro 2s. They just came out. I race Worlds in the Pro 1s, and I love racing in them. They're our new carbon shoe. So I'm going to be racing in the Pro 2s. I'm an Infinite girl, but the Pro 2s are growing on me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. Great to chat, and best of luck out there.
Thank you so much.